back in March of 2017, Nintendo launched the Switch, and the rest, as they say, is history. And if you go back to March of 2017, you'll find a lot of people complaining that Nintendo isn't making enough Switch consoles. Nintendo is constraining supply on purpose. And, I've talked about this many times, that is not good business, and I don't think that it's what Nintendo does. I know that there's a lot of conspiracy theory out there that says that Nintendo purposely constrains supply in order to ramp up demand. I think that they are just a very conservative company, and because they're so conservative, they don't want to leave consoles sitting on the shelves unsold. They underproduce the number of consoles because they are so conservative. And if you had asked most people, they would say that while the Switch had a very good launch, the sales could have been much higher because they didn't have enough supply in the chain. And to those people that would say that, I would probably agree with them. It makes a lot of sense. If they had more consoles on the shelves, then people would have been able to get them easier. It was difficult to get a Switch back in March, and as time went on, it got easier and easier, but you can't argue with the results because according to Business Wire, Nintendo now has the fastest selling video game system of this generation. That means it sold more than the PS4 and more than the Xbox in the same amount of time, which is pretty crazy. Nintendo is back on top, it seems. Now, you can't say that you can say that they're outselling PlayStation and that they're outselling Xbox, but they're not the number one console because both PlayStation and Xbox have extra time ahead. Like Nintendo came into this generation of consoles late, and it seems to be paying off for them because they're selling so much faster. It's the fastest video game generation through 21 months. So they're looking at the first 21 months of sales, according to the NPD Group, who tracks video game sales. It says right here, from its launch in March 2017 through November 2018, Nintendo Switch has sold more than 8.7 million units, outpacing U.S. sales of all other current generation systems at the same point in their life cycles. That's pretty great. And the software sales are also really crazy. Nintendo, in addition to selling 8.7 million units that quickly, Nintendo is also overall the top U.S. software publisher in 2018. So this year, they sold more games from Nintendo than anybody else. And that's actually really interesting because if you look at 2018, there wasn't a lot of new games published by Nintendo. Most of the Switch's library from 2018 is coming from third parties because they kind of dumped all of their huge names and huge games in 2017. So that tells me that a lot of these games are from 2017. We're talking Breath of the Wild, we're talking Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, all those games that get Mario Odyssey, like all those games that came out last year, these huge heavy hitters, they were also big sellers this year. Nintendo hardware unit and dollar sales for 2018, they're at their highest annual totals since 2011. Since 2011, like that is just bananas. Over eShop sales, so those are just digital sales, have grown over 105% since 2017. And it says here, evergreen Nintendo Switch games have set new milestones, with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe selling over 4 million and 5 million units respectively, Super Mario Odyssey has sold over 4.7 million units, and keep in mind that that's in 1 year and on the newest console. So like it doesn't have the huge install base. You look at things like the PlayStation, which has a massive install base. It makes sense for them to sell 4.7 million units of something because there's so many PlayStations out there. One of them's right here next to me. But the Nintendo Switch, they don't have nearly as many sold because they haven't been on the market as long. So it's pretty amazing that they're selling 4.7 million units of Super Mario Odyssey. That shows that there is a really, really high attach rate to first-party Nintendo published games. Now, when you look at that, some people might say, well, people buy Nintendo consoles for Nintendo games, and while that's probably true for the most part, the third-party sales have also been really good. I've read story after story after story this year of third-party publishers who've either brought a new game to the Switch or ported a game to the Switch, and the sales on the Switch have either met or exceeded expectations of what has happened on other platforms. The people are spending a lot more money on the Switch than they are on other platforms. And maybe that's because you can take it with you. And there are some people out there that will say, well, then let's get a portable PlayStation out there. Let's get a portable Xbox out there. And I'm not opposed to that idea. I don't think Microsoft is even a little interested. Microsoft seems to be the company that is only interested in having the biggest numbers. And, if you're an Xbox person, please don't take this personally. But I think a lot of Xbox, like every time that they get up on stage, they're always like, this is the most powerful console on the planet. And while that may or may not be true, I think it is true. It's like ridiculously powerful, the Xbox One X. While that may or may not be true, that's not the most important thing about a console. The most important thing about a console is how fun are the games. And Nintendo just always seems to kill it in the fun department. Then we look at PlayStation. PlayStation had the PSP, they had the Vita. Then they kind of folded up their tents and said, we're just gonna let Nintendo have the portable market. It's kind of dying anyway because everybody's got their cell phones all the time, and it's too hard to compete with this little slab that you can carry around and keep in your pocket all day long. And I agree with that. It is hard to compete with that, but somehow Nintendo found a way to do it. And I think that's because the Switch also plugs into a TV. So this story from Business Wire is very interesting to me. And I think that Nintendo are clearly onto something. And I'm very interested in seeing what happens at E3 next year. When the Switch first came out and people were having a lot of fun with it, a lot of people were speculating that Sony would follow suit and bring out a Nintendo Switch style piece of hardware at E3 for this year. And that didn't happen, even though we saw patents that made it look like that, but that didn't happen. Now, if you were to ask me why do I think that didn't happen this year, it takes a long time to develop and test hardware. I'm not saying that Sony is not working on this, and I'm not saying that they are working on it. But if they are working on a portable console similar to the Switch, then it's going to take a lot longer than going from March of 2017 to E3 2018 in order to make that happen for PlayStation. And like, I can't imagine how long the Switch was in development for. We might, if we're lucky, if Sony is working on a portable competition for the Switch, if we're lucky, we might see something at E3 next year. And much more probable is that we would see it the year after, because it takes a really long time to develop hardware and get everything just right. You can't just slap stuff together. Like, Sony can't just slap a bunch of stuff together and say, look, it's just like the Switch, but more powerful, because they have design constraints. They have many more design constraints when it comes to something that is portable than you do when you have something that sits on a table. because something that sits on a table can be plugged in all the time, and it can have easy ways to get rid of heat. Something that's portable, you have to be very, very deliberate about how big it is, how much power it uses, how quick it charges, how it dissipates heat, all of those things. And solving all of those problems in a short period of time, I think, is too tall of an order to ask for any hardware developer who was caught flat-footed when Nintendo unveiled to the world the Nintendo Switch and showed us, hey, portable gaming isn't dead.